a respected doctor, a loving mother-to-be, and a secret that would end in a brutal act of violence. What happens when the person sworn to protect life becomes the one to take it away? Today, we delve into a case that shocked a community to its core and exposed the darkness that can lurk behind a facade of prestige and care. This is a story of love, betrayal, and a relentless quest for justice. Before we unravel this chilling tale, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our deep dives into the most compelling cases. Now, let's begin the story of the obstetrics chief and the murder that stained a town forever. The autumn air in the idyllic town of Crestwood Hills carried the crisp scent of changing leaves and the distant promise of winter. For Amelia Cartwright, it was the scent of a new beginning. At 32, her life seemed to be a portrait of modern perfection. A talented architect with a sharp mind and a gentle spirit, she was 7 months pregnant with her first child, a daughter she had already named Clara. Her joy was a quiet, radiant warmth that touched everyone she met. Amelia's world was one of clean lines and thoughtful design, much like the homes she created. Her firm, Cartwright Designs, had become a sought-after name in the affluent community, known for its ability to blend contemporary aesthetics with a sense of lived-in comfort. Her latest project, however, was her most personal, the nursery for her unborn daughter. Every detail, from the soft, muted colors of the walls to the hand-carved wooden mobile of celestial bodies, was a testament to a mother's love. The other half of this seemingly perfect picture was Dr. Alistair Finch, the charismatic and highly respected chief of obstetrics at Crestwood Hills General Hospital. To the town, they were a golden couple. Alistair, with his reassuring smile and impeccable bedside manner, was a pillar of the community, a man who had guided countless families through the miracle of birth. His relationship with Amelia was viewed as a modern fairy tale, the brilliant doctor and the gifted architect, their lives seemingly as well-designed as the homes she built. But within the walls of their sprawling, minimalist home, a different reality was taking shape. The clean lines of their life were becoming blurred, the thoughtful design marred by a growing, unspoken tension. The man Amelia had fallen in love with, the man who was meant to be her partner on this journey into parenthood, was becoming a stranger, his charismatic exterior a carefully constructed wall hiding a man she no longer recognized. The disagreements had started as mere whispers, quiet dissonances in the otherwise harmonious melody of their life. Alistair's work, once a shared source of pride, had become his constant alibi. He returned home later and later, the sterile scent of the hospital clinging to him along with a faint, unfamiliar trace of expensive perfume. A deep weariness had settled in his eyes, a fatigue that seemed to go beyond the demanding hours of a dedicated physician. Amelia, ever the pragmatist, had tried to rationalize it. She understood the immense pressure of his profession, the life and death decisions that rested on his shoulders. She created a sanctuary for him, a peaceful haven to retreat from the chaos of the hospital. She would have his favorite single malt waiting, the fireplace lit, a quiet dinner ready. But her gestures were met with a cool, detached politeness that was more chilling than any angry outburst. The hairline cracks in their relationship fractured into a gaping chasm one Tuesday evening. It was a moment of sickening cliché. A phone left on the marble countertop, a screen illuminating with a name she didn't know, Cat, and a message that stole the air from her lungs. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." It was followed by a string of emojis that felt like a personal insult. The other woman, as Amelia would soon discover, was a pharmaceutical representative, a stunningly beautiful woman with a relentless ambition that mirrored Alistair's own. The realization was a physical blow, a betrayal so profound it left her dizzy with disbelief. The man who held her hand during ultrasounds, who whispered promises of their future family, was living a meticulously crafted lie. The confrontation was not the explosive, cathartic release she might have imagined. It was cold, clinical, and terrifying. Alistair, when faced with the undeniable proof, did not crumble. His mask of the compassionate doctor didn't just slip. It was cast aside, revealing a man of chilling composure and cruel calculation. He didn't deny the affair. Instead, with surgical precision, He began to dissect their relationship, turning the blame, the fault, the entire weight of his infidelity onto her. He cited her emotionality during the pregnancy, her distraction with the nursery, her unreasonable expectations. He twisted her nesting instincts into a form of obsession, her joy into a suffocating pressure. The pregnancy, the very miracle he championed in his professional life, was now presented as the catalyst for his betrayal, the inconvenient truth that had driven him into the arms of another woman. Heartbroken and utterly bewildered, Amelia found herself adrift in the wreckage of her life. The future she had so carefully designed was now a blueprint for a life she didn't want. She was faced with an impossible choice: to remain in this gilded cage, to accept the hollow shell of a marriage for the sake of their unborn child, or to find the strength to walk away and build a new life from the foundations up. In the days that followed, Amelia's design studio became her refuge. She immersed herself in her work, the clean lines and precise angles a welcome contrast to the chaotic mess of her personal life. She found a strange solace in creating spaces for other families, her own dreams for her home, now a source of profound pain. She confided in her older brother, Marcus, a pragmatic lawyer who had always been her protector. Marcus, who had never fully trusted Alistair's polished charm, was livid. His advice was clear and unequivocal. "You have to leave him, Ames," Marcus had insisted, his voice a low growl of controlled anger. "This isn't a man who made a mistake. This is a man who is showing you who he is. Believe him. You and Clara deserve a life built on truth, not on his perfectly curated lies." Marcus's words solidified a resolve that had been quietly forming in Amelia's heart. She had to be strong not just for herself, but for her daughter. She began to make a plan, a quiet, methodical dismantling of the life she had shared with Alistair. She secretly contacted a real estate agent, looking for a small, light-filled apartment in the city, a place where she and Clara could start anew. She had a consultation with a divorce attorney, her voice barely a whisper as she discussed custody arrangements and asset division. Alistair, with the keen intuition of a predator sensing its prey is about to escape, changed his tactics. The cold indifference was replaced by a sudden, intense campaign of affection. He filled their home with peonies, her favorite flower. He booked a weekend at a luxurious spa, whispering about reconnecting, about getting back to the way they were. He was a master of manipulation, his apologies as smooth and practiced as his surgical technique. But Amelia was no longer the woman who had been so easily captivated by his charm. The betrayal had stripped away her naivety, revealing a core of steel she never knew she possessed. She saw his actions not as genuine remorse, but as a calculated strategy to regain control. She knew the man she had loved was an illusion, and the man behind the mask was someone to be feared. The final week of Amelia's life was a tightrope walk of forced civility and simmering tension. She was an architect drawing up the plans for her own escape, a woman on the precipice of a new, independent life. She had secured the apartment, a beautiful space with a small balcony perfect for a morning cup of tea. She had begun to discreetly pack, her life with Alistair being sorted into boxes, a painful but necessary process of separation. On the last night of her life, the unspoken truce was shattered. She had finally told him, her voice calm and resolute, that she was leaving. She had laid out her plans, not as a point of negotiation, but as a statement of fact. She and Clara would be starting their new life, a life free from his deceit. Alistair's reaction was unlike anything she had ever seen. The charming, composed doctor vanished, replaced by a man consumed by a terrifying, narcissistic rage. The thought of losing control of his perfect image being shattered by a public and messy divorce was more than he could bear. He didn't plead or beg. He threatened. He painted a grim picture of her future, a lonely, struggling single mother, her career ruined by the scandal he would create. Amelia, however, remained steadfast. Her maternal instincts had forged her fear into a protective shield. Her final words to him were not of anger, but of quiet, unshakable strength. "You don't own me, Alistair," she had said, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "And you don't own our daughter. We will not be another one of your secrets. We will have a life, a real one, with or without you. The next morning, it was Marcus who made the horrific discovery. A gnawing sense of unease had prompted him to drive to the house after Amelia failed to answer his calls. Using the key she had given him for emergencies, he stepped into a house that was unnervingly silent. He found her in the nursery. The room that was to be a haven of peace and love was now a scene of unimaginable horror. Amelia lay on the floor, her lifeblood staining the soft, cream-colored rug. The celestial mobile she had so lovingly assembled swayed gently in the draft from the open door, a silent, heartbreaking witness to the violence that had unfolded beneath it. The news of Amelia Cartwright's death ripped through the tranquil facade of Crestwood Hills. The brutal, senseless murder of a pregnant woman in her own home was the stuff of nightmares, a horror that the affluent community believed only happened elsewhere. The initial assumption was of a home invasion gone tragically wrong, a random act of violence that was as inexplicable as it was cruel. But as the police began their meticulous investigation, a different, more chilling narrative began to take shape. There was no sign of forced entry, no valuables had been taken. The only thing stolen was a promising future, a young mother's life, and the life of the child she had carried. The focus of the investigation inevitably narrowed, shifting from a faceless intruder to the man who had shared Amelia's life and home. Dr. Alistair Finch, the esteemed chief of obstetrics, the man who had dedicated his life to bringing new life into the world, was now the prime suspect in a murder investigation that would unravel the dark secrets hidden behind the pristine, white picket fences of Crestwood Hills. The quest for justice for Amelia and Clara had just begun, a journey that would force a community to look beyond the polished surfaces of success and confront the terrifying truth that monsters can wear the most respectable of masks. The investigation into the murder of Amelia Cartwright was assigned to Detective Frank Morrison, a man whose weary eyes had seen the worst of human nature. Nearing retirement, Morrison was a methodical, old-school detective who believed that every secret, no matter how well kept, eventually found its way to the surface. The scene in the nursery, a sacred space of maternal love desecrated by brutal violence, had left an indelible mark on his soul. This wasn't just a case. It was a crusade for a mother and child who never got their chance. Morrison's first walkthrough of the crime scene screamed personal. The level of violence, the sheer rage unleashed upon Amelia, was not the work of a dispassionate burglar. This was a crime of passion, an explosion of fury that was intimate and targeted. The absence of a forced entry, the undisturbed valuables, all pointed to a killer who had a key, a killer who was welcomed into the home. As protocol dictated, the first person of interest was the victim's partner. Dr. Alistair Finch played the part of the grief-stricken fiancé with an unnerving, almost theatrical perfection. During his initial interview, he was a portrait of controlled sorrow, his voice breaking at just the right moments, his eyes welling with tears that never seemed to fall. He spoke of his profound love for Amelia, their shared excitement for Clara, and the utter devastation of having his future stolen from him. He painted their relationship as a flawless union, a partnership of two successful people building a perfect life. But Morrison, a man who had spent 3 decades deciphering the subtle language of lies, felt a profound sense of unease. There was a rehearsed quality to Alistair's grief, a chilling lack of the raw, messy emotion that accompanies such a devastating loss. It was a performance, and Morrison was an unwilling audience. The first thread in the unraveling of Alistair's perfect life came from Marcus Cartwright. Unlike Alistair's composed sorrow, Marcus's grief was a raging inferno. His anger was a palpable force in the interview room, his words a torrent of accusations that washed away the pristine image Alistair had so carefully constructed. He told Morrison everything. He spoke of Alistair's emotional distance, his late nights, and his growing coldness towards Amelia. He detailed the discovery of the affair, the text messages, and the other woman. He described Alistair's manipulative apologies, his history of gaslighting, and his obsessive need to control every aspect of his life, including Amelia. He's a narcissist of the highest order, Marcus had seethed, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Amelia wasn't a partner to him. She was an acquisition. a beautiful, successful woman who made him look good. But when she decided to leave, when she threatened to tarnish his perfect reputation, he couldn't handle it. He wasn't losing the love of his life. He was losing control of his narrative. Marcus's testimony was the key that unlocked the investigation. It provided a powerful motive that had been missing from the initial home invasion theory. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was the desperate, final act of a man whose carefully constructed world was about to be demolished. The investigation pivoted, now focusing entirely on Dr. Alistair Finch. Morrison and his team began to systematically dismantle his life, peeling away the layers of respectability to reveal the rot beneath. They subpoenaed his phone records, his financial statements, and his work emails. They interviewed everyone in his orbit, from his colleagues at the hospital to the woman he had been seeing. At the hospital, Alistair was universally respected for his medical prowess, but he was not well liked. Colleagues spoke of his towering ego, his dismissive attitude towards nurses, and his ruthless ambition. He was a man who saw people as instruments for his own advancement. The other woman, Catherine "Cat" Barlow, proved to be another crucial witness. Initially defensive, she eventually cooperated when faced with the gravity of the situation. She described a man who was charming and attentive but also deeply secretive and compartmentalized. He had sold her a story of a loveless relationship, portraying Amelia as a demanding and emotionally unstable woman from whom he was planning to escape. Her testimony provided a chilling insight into Alistair's capacity for deception. The physical evidence began to mount, each piece another nail in Alistair's coffin. A microscopic drop of blood found on the cuff of the shirt he was wearing on the day of the murder was a match for Amelia's DNA. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible clue, but in a case built on circumstantial evidence, it was a powerful link. Investigators also found faint scratches on Alistair's forearms, which he had dismissed as a brush with a rose bush in his garden. The forensic pathologist, however, identified them as defensive wounds, consistent with the fingernail scratches of a person fighting for their life. The most damning piece of evidence, however, came from the digital footprint Alistair had tried so desperately to erase. A forensic analysis of his laptop revealed a series of disturbing internet searches in the week leading up to the murder. How to get away with murder. Undetectable poisons. How to disable home security cameras. He had deleted the search history, but in the digital world, nothing is ever truly gone. Morrison brought Alistair in for a second interview. The atmosphere in the interrogation room was thick with tension. The pretense of the grieving partner was gone, replaced by the cold, arrogant demeanor of a man who believed he was intellectually superior to everyone in the room. He answered Morrison's questions with a calm, unwavering denial, his legal training evident in his precise and evasive language. But Morrison was no longer playing games. He laid out the evidence, piece by methodical piece, on the table between them. The phone records that placed him near the house at the time of the murder, despite his claims of being at the hospital. The affair, the scratches on his arms, the blood on his shirt, and finally the internet searches. You were planning it, weren't you, Doctor? Morrison's voice was low and steady, a stark contrast to the rage boiling beneath the surface. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated execution. Amelia was a problem you needed to solve. A loose end you needed to tie up before she could ruin the perfect life you had built on a foundation of lies. For the first time, Alistair's composure faltered. A flicker of something not fear, but pure, unadulterated rage flashed in his eyes. The mask of civility slipped, and in that fleeting moment, Morrison saw the monster that Amelia had seen in her final moments. The arrest of Dr. Alistair Finch for the murder of Amelia Cartwright and their unborn child sent a seismic shock through Crestwood Hills. The man they had trusted with their wives and their children, the man who was a symbol of healing and life, was now accused of a crime of unimaginable brutality. The case became a national obsession, a sordid tale of affluence, infidelity, and murder that played out on a 24-hour news cycle. The quiet, tree-lined streets of Crestwood Hills were now a backdrop for a media frenzy, the peace of the community shattered by the ugly truth that had been exposed. The forthcoming trial was already being hailed as the trial of the decade, a legal showdown that would pit a celebrated doctor and master manipulator against a determined detective and a mountain of damning evidence. The quest for justice for Amelia and Clara was entering its final, crucial phase. The stage was set for a courtroom battle that would not only determine the fate of one man, but also force a community to reckon with the darkness that had been hiding in plain sight. The trial of Dr. Alistair Finch was the biggest legal event Crestwood Hills had ever seen. The historic courthouse, with its polished wood and solemn portraits, became the epicenter of a media storm. Every day, crowds of onlookers and reporters gathered on the steps, a testament to the public's morbid fascination with a tragedy that had shattered the town's tranquil image. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Lena Petroselli, a sharp, tenacious lawyer with a reputation for being unshakable in the courtroom. Her case was built on a simple, powerful narrative, that Dr. Alistair Finch was a malignant narcissist who, when faced with the loss of control, chose murder over the destruction of his meticulously crafted public image. Petroselli presented her case with methodical precision. She wove together the digital evidence, the forensic findings, and the witness testimonies into a tight, damning tapestry. One by one, she called witnesses to the stand, each one adding another brushstroke to the portrait of a cold, calculating killer. Colleagues spoke of his arrogance, Catherine Barlow recounted his web of lies, and forensic experts detailed the evidence that physically linked him to the crime. The emotional anchor of the prosecution's case was Marcus Cartwright. On the stand, his grief was a raw, palpable force that silenced the courtroom. He recounted the story of his sister's final months, her initial joy turning to confusion, then fear. He read aloud the last text message she had sent him, just hours before her death. "I'm finally doing it. I'm choosing me and Clara. I'm a little scared, but I know it's right." His testimony was a heartbreaking tribute to the woman who had been stolen from him, a powerful indictment of the man who sat impassively at the defense table. Alistair's defense was helmed by the legendary defense attorney, Sterling Thorne, a man known for his silver tongue and his ability to create reasonable doubt where none seemed to exist. Thorne's strategy was audacious. He didn't just aim to poke holes in the prosecution's case. He aimed to create an entirely new narrative. He portrayed Alistair as the ultimate victim, a man devastated by the loss of his family and now being wrongfully accused by an incompetent police force and a vindictive brother-in-law. He argued that the police had succumbed to tunnel vision, ignoring other potential leads. He presented a shadowy, alternate suspect, a disgruntled former employee of Amelia's architectural firm who had been fired for stalking another employee months prior. It was a flimsy theory, backed by little evidence, but Thorne's masterful storytelling planted just enough of a seed of doubt. The trial was a masterclass in legal theater, a high-stakes chess match between two brilliant legal minds. The town of Crestwood Hills was transfixed, the community divided. The trial reached its zenith when Dr. Alistair Finch, against the advice of his attorney, chose to take the stand. He was the picture of calm confidence, his voice smooth and measured, his eyes radiating a practiced sincerity. He was a chameleon, transforming from the accused murderer into a grieving, wronged man. He spoke of his deep love for Amelia, his excitement about becoming a father, and the misunderstandings that had plagued their relationship. He dismissed his affair as a terrible mistake, a symptom of the stress he was under. He even had an explanation for the internet searches, claiming he was doing research for a medical thriller novel he was contemplating writing. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, and for a moment, it seemed to sway some in the courtroom. But under Petroselli's withering cross-examination, the performance began to unravel. With surgical precision, she dismantled his story, exposing the contradictions and the sheer implausibility of his claims. She was relentless, her questions like a barrage of relentless blows against his carefully constructed wall of lies. The final, fatal blow came when Petroselli presented a piece of evidence the defense had not been prepared for. The police had recovered a burner phone from the storm drain a block away from Alistair's house. On it were a series of text messages to a private investigator, sent in the weeks before the murder, requesting a full background check and surveillance on Amelia. The last message, sent 2 days before her death, reads simply, "I need to know everything. Who she's talking to, where she's going. I need to control the narrative." The phrase, "control the narrative," the exact words Marcus had used to describe his motive, echoed through the silent courtroom. Alistair's face, for the first time, registered a flicker of genuine shock. The mask had not just slipped, it had been shattered. The jury's deliberation was surprisingly swift. After just 6 hours, they returned with a verdict. The court clerk's voice was steady as he read the single word that sealed Alistair's fate: guilty. A collective gasp went through the courtroom, followed by the sound of Marcus Cartwright sobbing quietly into his hands. At his sentencing, Alistair Finch remained defiant, never admitting guilt, never showing a shred of remorse. The judge, in a voice dripping with contempt, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling his crime an act of ultimate betrayal and profound evil. Justice, in the eyes of the law, had been served. But for those who loved Amelia, the verdict was a somber conclusion, not a victory. It could not bring back the vibrant, talented woman whose life had been so cruelly extinguished, could not give Clara the chance to take her first breath. In the years that followed, Crestwood Hills healed, but it never forgot. The case of the doctor who killed his pregnant fiancée became a dark chapter in the town's history, a grim reminder that evil can flourish in the most unexpected places. Marcus Cartwright, in an effort to create a lasting legacy for his sister, established the Clara's Light Foundation, a non-profit organization that provides legal aid and housing for pregnant women trying to escape abusive relationships. Amelia's architectural firm was taken over by her partners, who dedicated a wing of their office to her memory, her designs and sketches displayed as a testament to her talent. The story of Amelia Cartwright became more than just a sensational headline. It became a powerful cautionary tale about the insidious nature of coercive control and narcissistic abuse. It was a story that encouraged people to look beyond the perfect facade, to recognize the warning signs, and to believe victims. The memory of Amelia and her unborn daughter, Clara, lived on, not as victims of a horrific crime, but as a symbol of the enduring strength of the human spirit and the unwavering pursuit of a justice that extends far beyond the walls of a courtroom.